be hard. No one is promised an easy ride. Every man faces challenges in life. Some are seasons of strength, while others feel like you're just hanging on, trying to catch your breath. But no man was meant to fight alone. Every fighter needs a corner, a place where you're strengthened, where truth is spoken, where you're reminded of who you are. This is Cornermen, a place for Christian men who want to grow stronger, not just on the outside, but in character and faith. Honest conversations anchored in biblical ground. Real encouragement for the battles we all face. Each episode will discuss issues that men are dealing with. We'll hear from men who have walked the road and unpacked the practical ways to live out their faith where it really matters. At home, at work, and in the quiet moments of life when no one else sees. So wherever you're watching from, welcome to Cornermen. Take a breath from the issues of life. Reset your strength, as this week we cover the topic of.
Well, I am excited to be here and to talk about responsibilities in the Christian home as a man. But first, I guess, before we get into that, I'd like to share a little bit about my testimony. I grew up in a small country town. I was born in Sale in Victoria and then grew up in Traralgon. It was my mum and my two brothers. My mum and my dad were divorced, but fortunately for me, even though they were divorced, they had a very, very amicable relationship. It was great. In fact, to me, they were just like good friends. My two older brothers, they had a different dad. So both of my parents were married 3 times, which we'll get to, I'm sure. That brings its own sort of challenges. We were a blended family, I guess, in a way, as it is. They're my half-brothers. But we never really saw it like that. We were as thick as thieves, all 3 of us. And yeah, sure, we fought like brothers, but we also loved like brothers. And I think that was something pretty special growing up and things that I'll never forget. It wasn't a Christian home that I grew up in. I mean, we didn't have a practice of going to church. We definitely didn't walk by the ways of the Bible, if I could put it that way. However, if you had asked any of them, we all believed in God. What that looked like or what our understanding of that was very shallow. We weren't saved, but we would all say that we believed in God. We definitely wouldn't say that we didn't. That later on in life, having the opportunity to even be in a household that is like that definitely helped as I got older. This one's a perfect lead on from what I just said, I guess, in my testimony, because I don't want it to sound like a super spiro answer, but I think one of the things that I've been neglecting is my personal relationship with God. You know, God's placed a responsibility in my life as a Christian and as a husband and as a father to lead my family in God's ways. Before I was married and even when I got married at the start of our marriage, you know, that was very easy because we only really had my wife and I that I had to look after and worry about. And then as time progressed and, you know, we have kids and now we've got 3 of them, we're about to have our 4th, you know, responsibilities in our mind kind of change. And we think about providing for the home, making sure the bills are paid, making sure everyone has enough food, making sure that, you know, the house is happy. As the kids get older, they've got different interests. They want to play more sport. They want to do more things, which again costs more money. So we need to make sure that our income is consistently increasing. And so that has taken the focus of my responsibility is to make sure that those things are catered for as a priority. I was always raised and brought up in a way that as our main function and our main role as a provider of the home is that no one should be lacking anything. We need to make sure that we take that responsibility on ourselves and that they have what they need. I wasn't able to compartmentalize things in the appropriate manner. Kind of put God on the back burner a little bit, knowing that He's there, of course, and always believing in Jesus. I've never wavered in my faith in Jesus. However, my relationship at times has been very neglected because I've put things before Him that shouldn't have been before Him. If there's extra provisions or extra bills that come in that I needed to meet, I had to find a way personally to try and meet those needs, rather than bringing God along for the ride as part of that relationship and our family dynamic to be able to help us through those times. And looking back now, it could have been a lot easier had I have just paused and spent time with God and made him the priority and allowed him into those situations. I think it would have probably prevented a lot of mistakes, and a lot of mistakes that I'd made personally. You have to have good daily choices, good daily habits, good daily non-negotiables that you hold personally, that you're accountable to yourself and first and foremost to God. If you can hold God, if you can hold yourself to account on the non-negotiables that you have in your life to God first, then you'll do a lot better than trying to hold yourself to a set of behaviors that you try and put in place with your wife. And that's one of the things that I found. I'd made some mistakes as well, and I'd done some things that were wrong. What I needed to do was allow God to change me personally and take the responsibility of those things and have the desire to change from the inside to Godward, rather than trying to be a better behaved man for my wife and not make those mistakes. Now, don't get me wrong, you need to behave appropriately with your wife 100%, but if that's the sole reason why you do it, then I feel like you set yourself up for failure, because you will do it again and you will fall again. You need to allow God and take the responsibility as a strong man, the spiritual head of the home, to change you from the inside out and see his ways through your own eyes, not change your behavioral measures just because your wife's asked you to do something differently. Okay. This one, I have never spoken about this publicly. Now it's going to be out there for everyone to see, which brings a certain level of nervousness for me. To my own shame, I've allowed sin into my life, into my marriage, which disrupted not only the comfort and the atmosphere of the home, but also it created a lot of issues that didn't need to be there if I took on the responsibility that I needed to take on in the right way. When I was young and growing up, we didn't grow up in a Christian home. This is not an excuse, I'm just painting a picture. For me, it was readily available, and things were around that in a Christian home you wouldn't find. For example, I had a great stepdad. Whenever I'm down there, I still catch up with him. But he was a panel beater and also, a non-Christian. And back then, it was very common for them to have pornography magazines sat beside the toilet. You close the toilet door, there's a calendar full of calendar girls on the toilet. You go to the workshop to help him out panel beating. There's 4 or 5 magazines laid out everywhere. There's calendars everywhere. Even in the lounge rooms, like VHSs of pornographies were just put into the cupboard. And of course, when they're out, the boys would go and grab them and put them on and whatever. At the time, we thought that was something of innocence. We didn't think that there was any problem with it. We didn't think that there was any issue with it. We didn't even know any different, to be brutally honest. And if I was to use an excuse, that would be it. It was done in ignorance. However, when I came to Christ, I knew that those things were wrong. I knew that those things were something that you shouldn't do. And there was a seed, I guess, that was in me that was sown from a long time ago. And my wife actually caught me watching pornography one time. It's probably the first time that I've shared it with anybody, even though I'm just talking to a camera. It created a lot of disruption in our marriage. She was extremely hurt, and I had been caught. Like Adam, I tried to deny it. I tried to hide it. I tried to sow fig leaves, but I was caught. And it greatly affected the responsibility of being the man of the house, that I was supposed to set the example, that I really needed a lifestyle change. I really needed to meet with God and sort this out. Now, to my wife's amazing credit, she forgave me. She was deeply, deeply hurt, and to the point where she had then become insecure, about herself, her body, my conversations with other women, it caused a lot of damage. And, you know, I couldn't fix that, which as a man was very difficult to try and I don't want to make any excuses. I want to take responsibility for that. But we want to fix things. If we make a mistake, we want to try and fix it and change it. But this was big, and it was going to take time. I had broken her trust. I had broken the responsibility as a man of my home, and I had no way out of this. And we can sometimes, if we get caught with our hand in the cookie jar, as men, we want to find a way out of things. We want to try and weave our way out of it, the least amount of pain possible. But this was not an opportunity for me to do that. This was, I need to cop this head on. As much force as it comes, I need to be able to take it. And if I want my marriage to last, then I need to somehow find God in all of this and fix the situation. Coming from a Christian background, I had to learn a lot of these things in almost a way of how do I walk through this life. And I couldn't do it without Jesus. I couldn't do it without Jesus Christ. He has saved me. He has redeemed me. He has kept my marriage together. My parents, I love them both dearly, but they had both had 3 marriages and 3 failed marriages. Divorce is not something that we ever say in our home. It's not something that's going to come into our life. It's not something that is an option. However, when I do something like this, or when I did something like this that was to that level and that sort of gravity, it has a significant impact. Without God in my life, without God in her life, we wouldn't have been able to get through this. A step that I take not only this week, but every day, since falling in that way, which is shameful and incredibly detrimental to a marriage, to a relationship, to a leadership that you're supposed to show to your family, your kids. A step that I take every day is to try and be more transparent with my wife in any way that I possibly can. I'm the one who's made a mistake, and I'm the one who needs to take responsibility. So therefore, because of the mistake that I had made, it requires a different level of responsibility to make sure that I can keep the devil out of our home. The man is the spiritual head of a home, and if we have unrepentant sin, if we have sin that's being kept under the covers, if we have things that are being hidden from our wives, then from first-hand experience, they will cause trouble, they will cause financial hardship, they will cause arguments, they will cause rifts within the home, and ultimately end in divorce. If we don't have a level of transparency, and if we don't take responsibility for our shortcomings and know them well, it will all crumble. So the step that I take as a man who wants to be responsible in my home and who wants to lead my family in God's ways and in God's word is I make sure that I'm fully transparent with my wife. That means everything. We have the computer out here in the living room. We have my phone that she can access at any time. Any messages, any social media, anything. She has full access. The bank account, she has full access. You name it. Whatever way that I can be transparent. The YouTube accounts, the history is always on. There's no deleting watch history or anything like that unless it's getting overloaded with too much watch time. Then we go through it together, and then we make sure we delete it together and have that transparency in our marriage. One of the things that we can do as men, and to take responsibility of our homes, to take responsibility of the relationships that we have with our wives and our children, is to be forthcoming. Learn from my mistakes and learn from my errors. If you have a problem with pornography, if you have a problem or an issue with sin in your life, and you feel like that you've got this struggle, you've tried to give up and you can't, tell your wife. It will help. It might not be comfortable at the start. There might be some friction. There might be some arguments, but tell your wife and there will be a way to make things right. Don't do what I did and get caught in it and then try and hide being caught. That will cause a lot more issues and make it a lot more difficult to get through. So take my advice, take responsibility for that sin and make sure that you loose yourself of that. Take that as far away from you as possible and make sure that you safeguard the door of your home with as many parameters as you possibly can. Not to be over legalistic about things, not to go and heap a whole bunch of rules on yourself, but to be a responsible man of your home, guarding the door of your home, that those spiritual, enemies, basically, there's no other way of saying it, the spiritual enemies cannot come inside your home. Protect your family, protect your wife, protect your own spirit, and build that hedge of protection around it by the habits that you keep.